So, Namaskaram, dear devotees. Today we shall start our journey in understanding the Mahabharata based on the knowledge that we have from our earlier classes. In our earlier classes, we covered many verses from the Bhagavad Gita and also the Upanishads. And with that knowledge, we shall now visit the Mahabharata. Okay? And today we will cover the first book, part of the first book. The first book is huge, okay? But we will just cover the beginning of that, and it is called the setting. How the Mahabharata, the foundation was laid. So we will look at simple things like what is the Mahabharata, who compiled it, and then we will visit some famous individuals who were King Shantanu, Satyavati, and the offspring. The offspring means the children. So Mahabharata, what is it? It is a discussion, okay? Just like Bhagavad Gita, there's a discourse between Krishna and Arjun. Of course, Dhritarashtra speaks the first verse. So chapter 1, first verse, Dhritarashtra speaks. Then there's also Duryodhan who speaks a few verses in chapter 1. But after that, it is a complete discourse between Lord Krishna and Arjun. So here the Mahabharata is also written in a very much dialogue form. Okay, there are stories, but a lot of it is in dialogue form. It is about the important principles of right living. So when we talk about right living, we immediately remember our previous class on the Purushartha, the purpose of human pursuit. What is our purpose in life and how do we do it correctly? And if you recall in that class, there are four of them: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And we also have this YouTube for your revision. This YouTube was on Vedanta Bhakti Satsang number 15. So there was quite a number of classes ago where we did the topic of pravritti and nivritti. Pravritti is basically the worldly focus approach, and nivritti, the contemplation. And from the conclusion of that class, which we did in Satsang 15, we all realized that in this world, we need to balance pravritti and nivritti. Because we are living in this world, we need to have a proper understanding of the worldly focus, yet we cannot forget what our inner contemplation, what is our purpose in life. So that is the nivritti portion. Okay, so this link over here, if you want to do some revision, it's available. So the Adi Parva, the first volume, okay, just like Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters, and the 18 chapters comprise of 700 verses. The Mahabharata is much bigger than that. It has 18 volumes, and the verses are around 200,000. There are around 200,000 verses, and it is split into 18 volumes. Okay? And it is declared that after you have heard the Mahabharata and you have understood it, you will never take an interest in listening to any other story. That's how wonderful the Mahabharata is. It also declares that if you recite, or even if you just listen, like for example, now you're listening about the Mahabharata, from others about the Mahabharata, there's no need to take a dip in what is called a Pushkara, or referring to the holy rivers or lakes. So when you listen to the Mahabharata, when you recite the Mahabharata, it's as though you are taking a dip in the Pushkara. And such a person earns untold merit. It also means that we are using, remember, the four faculties that we have, Vaikari, Madhyama, Pashanti, and Para. Vaikari is the oral speech. Madhyama is converting that oral speech into thoughts, and then moving to Pashanti, which is creating imagery, and then finally you get the feeling of the Lord, which is reaching Para. Okay, so you experience all that. So who compiled it, or who put the Mahabharata together? It was You probably know all that. You already know Vyasadeva, but what was Vyasadev's original name? It was actually Krishna Dvaipayana. That was his original name. So Krishna Dvaipayana, Krishna means the dark one. And Dvaipayana means one who is born in a dvipa or an island. So we know from this that Vyasadeva, original name Krishna Dvaipayana, he was born on a lake. But how come he was born on a lake? So Veda Vyasa or Vyasadeva is the title given to Krishna Dvaipayana as the compiler of the Vedas. So we break down the word Veda Vyasa. Vyasa means compiler. In fact, we celebrate Guru Purnima. Every year we celebrate Guru Purnima. It's actually in memory of Sri Vyasa's appearance day. Okay, because he is the Adi Guru, Vyasadeva. So he was what is known as a Satya Aveshvatara. Okay, and what is this word? Is a very long word. What does it mean? So the beginning part of the word is Shakti, which means power. And then Avesha means being empowered. Okay, so he was empowered, given the responsibility to do something. Avatar means the Lord's descent. So Vyasadeva, you can say, was an avatar. Okay, he was a Lord's descent. So a Satya Veshvatara is a spiritual person who is empowered by God to do a specific task, which means very mission-based. He comes, there's a function, he performs the function, and then he or she leaves. So Vyasadeva, who compiled the Mahabharata, not only did he compile the Mahabharata, he also compiled the Vedas, because prior to that, it was not written down. This knowledge was shared with the devotees orally, because our minds and intelligence were so sharp in the earlier days that once you listen to something, you remember it forever. There's no need to write it down. But because Kali Yuga was coming, and they realized that with the dawn of Kali Yuga, our memory will become less and less. Like, for example, sometimes I forget where I leave the house keys, where I left my car keys, and then I'm looking around here, there. And it was just 10 minutes ago that I left the car keys somewhere. So that's how good my memory is. So this is an example of Kali Yuga, okay? Memory being short span. So here, because the dawn of Kali Yuga was coming, there was a need to put the scriptures in the written form. So Vyasadeva was the individual who he actually wrote it down. So he wrote it down with the help of Lord Ganesh. But the credit for the origin of the Mahabharata and the Vedas go to Lord Brahma. Remember, I've used the word here, compiler. The word used here is not written. So Ved Vyas didn't write the Mahabharata. He didn't write the Vedas. The Vedas originally comes from Lord Brahma. The Mahabharata comes from Lord Brahma. But who actually compiled it, put it into, for example, the Mahabharata, who put it into 18 volumes? It was Ved Vyasa. Okay. Okay, this is a quick question. I made it easy. After we do a small topic, we have one or two questions. What is the Mahabharata primarily about? Is it about Indian kings? Is it about discourse on the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha? Is it a collection of devotional hymns to Lord Krishna, or is it the history of the Rig Veda? Prabhuji, what do you think?
It's about Dharma and Purushartha.
Correct. Thank you, Prabhuji. So it's a discourse on the four Purusharthas. It's basically the Mahabharata teaches us how to have right living. And right living is described as Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Basically, Dharma is the right action. Through right action, we can get possessions. Okay, what? Because to have our lives on planet Earth, we need certain possessions. Like we need a house, we need few other things to survive. Then from the things that we acquire during our lives here, we want to enjoy it. You live in your own house, you want to enjoy staying in your own house. That's karma, the enjoyment aspect. But eventually, if I just stick to Dharma, Artha, Kama, I will have to take another appearance, another birth again and again. But if I aspire something higher, then I can achieve moksha, which means I put a stop to this reappearance again and again. So, but the foundation is always Dharma. Whatever I get, whatever I enjoy, must be based on Dharma. Then I seek the Lord. Okay, I seek salvation, and that is moksha. Okay, that's question one. So the correct answer, the discourse of the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Okay, who compiled the Mahabharata? Is it Valmiki, Parasara Muni, Krishna, Dvaipayana, or Vyasadeva, or Narada Muni?
Vyasadeva.
Vyasadeva. Very good, Prabhuji. Correct answer, Krishna, Dvaipayana. So now we will push ahead and we'll say, how was Vyasadeva conceived? The giveaway was his name. His original name was Krishna Dvaipayana. So he was born on a lake. So his mother was a lady called Satyavati. So Satyavati was brought up by a fisherman, and her job was to ferry pilgrims across the river Yamuna. So you can see this little picture here, this drawing here. So you can say that this is Satyavati, and she's taking pilgrims across the river Yamuna. So once she was taking Parasara Muni, a very famous and great sage, in her boat. Parasara looked at her, and then he told her that she was destined to give birth to a very great person from a conception with him. So she was shocked. She said, conception with me, but I'm a young girl. I'm not married. How can I have a conception with you, a great sage? So she placed three conditions before him for the conception. She told him, first, no one on the shore should see. So what did Parasara Muni do? He created an artificial mist around the boat. Then she told him she must retain her virginity. Okay, so Vyasadeva gave her the assurance, yes, this is not an ordinary conception. I will basically just look at you and you will conceive. You don't have to worry. You will retain your virginity. Then she smelled very bad because she was a fisherman's daughter and she was always going in that fisherman's boat up and down across the river Yamuna. She basically smelled very bad. She smelled like fish. So she said, can you please replace the smell which I have with an intoxicating musk fragrance? So Parasara Muni said, Tatastu, I bless you to smell with a wonderful fragrance. So with that, Parasara Muni agreed to all these three conditions. Thus, Vyasadeva took birth in secret on an island in the river Yamuna. So Dvaipayana means one who is born in a dvipa or an island. So it was an accelerated conception. Basically, Parasara Muni blessed her and she got a child. Okay. So now we leave that story aside. We move now to an individual known as King Shantanu. So Shantanu was a king of Hastinapur. Where is Hastinapur in today's maps? Hastinapur was the capital of the kingdom at that time of Bharat and was located on the bank of the Ganga river in present-day Uttar Pradesh. So that's where Hastinapur was. Shantanu was the descendant of the Bharata race or the Luna dynasty. Okay? And the great grandfather of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So who was Shantanu? The great grandfather of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And he's a descendant of the Bharata race. The Bharata's tribe is mentioned as far back as the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is the first Veda. Of the four Vedas, the Rig comes first. So Shantanu was the son of King Pratipa of Hastinapur and had been born in the latter's old age. Basically, King Pratipa and his wife did not have children for many, many years. Then when King Pratipa was much older, that's when Shantanu was born. Then later, Shantanu became the king of Hastinapur. So Shantanu, he is best known for being the father of the great Bhishma. Original name for Bhishma was actually Devavrata. We will go through in the next few slides why his name changed from Devavrata to Bhishma. And who was Bhishma? One of the mightiest warriors of all time. And he was also known as the grandfather of the famous Kauravas and Pandavas. So now King Shantanu's background. Before he was born as Shantanu, he was an individual called Mahabhisha. And Mahabhisha was a powerful king in the Ishvaku dynasty, Duluna dynasty also. And he possessed many virtuous or godlike qualities. Once Mahabhisha, because he was such a great king, he was invited by Lord Brahma to his court, where all the devas and goddess Ganga were also present. So while the celestials were worshipping, all the devas were worshipping Lord Brahma, a wind blew and displaced Ganga's veil, which was covering her face. So when the wind blew and displaced Ganga's veil, her face was exposed. So everybody who was there, they looked down in respect. They didn't want to look at her, they looked down. They bent their heads down, except Mahabhisha. Mahabhisha saw how beautiful Ganga was, and he kept looking at her. And she, in return, looked at him. And of course, Lord Brahma noticed it. So upon seeing this, Brahma said to Mahabhisha and to Ganga that this behavior was unbefitting, unacceptable. And Mahabhisha had to be born again, although he was a king and he was already very elevated, so basically about to achieve moksha, he had to be born again as a human. And goddess Ganga, who also relished gazing or looking at Mahabhisha, had to be born also as a human. And the condition was she has to be born as a human and she had to meet Mahabhisha and break his heart. So that was the condition placed by Lord Brahma. So Mahabhisha felt really bad. So he then requested Brahma that he, Mahabhisha, be born as the son of King Pratipa. So the lineage was maintained. So his wish was granted by Brahma, and thus he was born in King Pratipa's late age. So Shantanu now returns. So he was Mahabhisha before, and because of what happened in Lord Brahma's court, he now has to come as the king, as the son of the king of Pratipa, and eventually he becomes the king of Hastinapur. So to reiterate, a child was born to King Pratipa and his wife in their old age, and the name given to him was Shantanu. And Shantanu means wholesome, because he was born when his parents had controlled their passions by aesthetic means. And once Shantanu had reached a suitable age, Pratipa and his wife took retirement, Varna Prastha, and they retired in the forest, and they installed him as the king of Hastinapur, and the parents went to perform penances. So once on his travels, King Shantanu saw a beautiful woman. It was actually Goddess Ganga. They were meant to meet on the banks of the, where was Goddess Ganga? By the banks of River Ganga. And it was love at first sight. Why? Because of the previous liking. Okay? And he asked her to marry him. She agreed, but with one condition. Shantanu would never ask any questions about what she would do. Okay? No questions. Whatever I do, you just accept what I do. Don't ask any questions. So, King Shantanu, but before I go to that, you look at how wonderful before it was Kali Yuga, okay? The kings would, after they reach the senior age, they will know when to abdicate. They will leave the throne and happily hand the throne to the successor. Why? Because they want to achieve moksha. They have already got dharma, artha, kama. They have already done their duties, responsibilities all completed. So now they move into sannyas. So they leave the kingdom to, 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 to build a stronger relationship with the Supreme Lord before leaving the world. Today in Kali Yuga, nobody does that. All the kings will hold on to the kingdom until they leave planet Earth. And even prime ministers, if they can, they will want to hold on to the prime ministership until many, many years because they feel they get enamored by the attraction of power and status, okay? And of course, wealth. So this is the difference between Kali Yuga leaders and the previous age leaders. So now we look at King Shantanu's marriage to Ganga. So Shantanu and Ganga, they got married, and later Ganga gave birth to a son. But we all know the story. She drowned the child. Shantanu could not ask her the reason because he had given her a promise. Whatever you do, Ganga, I will not ask you any questions because of the promise. And if he broke that promise, she would leave him. So one by one, 7 sons were born and drowned by Ganga. When Ganga was about to drown the 8th son, Shantanu was absolutely heartbroken. He was devastated. He could not restrain himself and he confronted her. He said, Gangaji, I know I made this promise to you, but 7 sons have been drowned. Why are you about to drown the 8th son? Okay? So finally, Ganga explained to King Shantanu about Brahma's penance given to him as Mahabhisha and her, because she remembered her time with Brahma, but as Shantanu couldn't remember. So she reminded him. Then she told him that these 8 boys are not normal boys. They were actually 8 Vasus, and they were serving their penance exacted by Vasishtha, the great Vasishtha. And Vasishtha had basically told the boys because they did something wrong, they had to be born on earth as mortal humans. However, when the Vasus pleaded with Vasishtha, he limited his curse and told them that they would be freed from the curse immediately upon birth as humans. What was the mistake they made? Basically, Vasishtha had a Kamadhenu, a wish-fulfilling cow. And these 8 Vasus with one leader, okay, one of them was the leader. He told the other 7 Vasus, let's go and steal Vasishtha's cow because it's a wish-fulfilling cow. Let's steal it. So the 8 Vasus who were elevated beings. They were not humans. They were higher than humans, okay? They stole his cow, and then Vasishtha, of course, because he's a Sapta Rishi, he knows you cannot hide anything from him. He knew who took the cow. So he told them, please return my cow. I know you took my cow, return that. And you have done something terribly wrong, so you have to serve a penance. And this penance is you have to be born as humans. So they begged him, please, we don't want to be born as humans, please, please, please. So he told them, okay, immediately after you are born, you will leave your bodies and you will come back. But you still have to be born on planet Earth because I have already said so. So she released 7 of them from human life by drowning them all. So basically, she, Ganga, goddess Ganga, was doing them a favor. Okay, but before we proceed, the 8th one, we will talk about the 8th one very soon. And before we proceed, we'll do just a few more questions. How was Vyasa Dev conceived? Was he born as an incarnation of Lord Vishnu in Dwarka? Or his mother Satyavati was blessed by a sage and bore him in an island? He was found floating in a river and raised by sages? Or he was created by Lord Brahma to write the scriptures?
That is, Satyavati was blessed in the island.
Very good, Prabhuji. So the mother was Satyavati and she was blessed by the sage. Can you remember the sage's name? Okay. Para what? Parasara Muni. Please remember, these names are very important. Okay. Parasara Muni was the sage who blessed Satyavati to conceive. Okay. For Vyasadeva to be conceived. So correct answer is B. So well done. Question number 4. Why was King Shantanu unable to question Ganga's actions after their marriage? Because he was cursed to remain silent, because he had taken a vow of silence for 12 years, because he promised not to question her actions as a condition of their marriage, or because he feared she would leave him if he asked questions.
He promised.
Yes, he promised. Very good, Prabhuji. Well done, well done. You're doing very well. Answer is C. So now we will continue our journey here. Dyaus equals to Devavrata equals to Bhishma. Okay. So the 8th Vasu, who was not drowned because Shantanu intervened and asked Lord Goddess Ganga, why are you drowning these boys? Okay. That Vasu was named Dyaus upon birth. And he was given the penance of a long life and not to have a wife or to have children. And why was he given this penance and not like the other 7? Because he was the ringleader. When they were all Vasus, when there were 8 Vasus together, it was Dyaus, okay, and when he was a Vasu, who hatched the idea. He came up with the idea to steal the Kamadhenu from Lord Vashisht. The others just followed. So their penance was very quick. Whereas Vasu, the Vasu named Dyaus, his penance was much longer. He had to come on planet Earth and remain on planet Earth for a very long time. So the sage Vashishtha gave a boon to Dyaus that although he will be on planet Earth for a long time, he will be very virtuous, which means he will be very godlike, very proper in his behavior. He will be very conversant, very knowledgeable of the Holy Scriptures, and he will be an obedient son to his father. So all these blessings were given by sage Vashishtha. So after his birth, this Dyaus, when he was a Vasu, his name was Dyaus. So now he's born on planet Earth, he's given the name Devavrata. So Ganga said, after Devavrata was born, Ganga told King Shantanu that she would take him along with her for about 15, 16 years and train him properly for the king's throne and the status. So with these words, she disappeared along with the child while Shantanu was struck with grief, thinking about spending the rest of his life without goddess Ganga. So now he became very lonely. So Devavrata was taken good care by Ganga for 16 years. After that, Ganga handed him back to Shantanu. She came back, she gave uh, Devavrata back to the father, and then she disappeared. So Devavrata was later known as Bhishma. Why? Because he took the oath of celibacy. So now we look at this family tree. Okay, we know a few names already. Parashara here is Parasara Muni. Parasara Muni had a conception with Satyavati, and they had a child called Vyasa. Okay. On the other side, Satyavati then married Shantanu. Okay. And Shantanu, after before he married Satyavati, he first married Ganga. So Shantanu first married Ganga. They had 8 boys, 1 survived. Okay. Dyaus, the Vasu, was renamed Devavrata when he was born on planet Earth. So they had a child called Bhishma and 7 others. 7 others because they were all drowned. Okay. So the surviving one was originally known as Devavrata, eventually known as Bhishma. Later, when Ganga left him, Shantanu then got married to Satyavati. Okay, and we will look at that very soon. So now King Shantanu meets Satyavati. Remember, for 16 years, he was alone, and then after that, he had a son. His son was returned to him by goddess Ganga, and then his son had grown up, going to be the heir to the throne. And what King Shantanu had done was he had even made him his crown prince, which means the whole kingdom knew that Devavrata would be the next king. However, on one of his trips to the forest, he meets Shantanu. Okay, King Shantanu was without a queen. Devavrata was the crown prince, but Shantanu felt lonely. So on a trip to the forest, Shantanu was traveling in the forest, and then he was mesmerized by a musk fragrance. Remember, Satyavati, one of her blessings from Parasara Muni was that she will get an intoxicating fragrance, a beautiful musk fragrance. So while Shantanu was in the forest, he could smell this beautiful smell coming, okay? It was coming from Satyavati. So allured by the sweet scent, Shantanu reached Satyavati's house. He kept following the smell. He found her in this house, and he fell in love at first sight. So then the king realized that the father was also there, and the father was the fisherman chief. So he asked the fisherman chief, "Can I please have your daughter's hand in marriage?" So the father replied that his daughter would marry the king only if her sons would inherit the throne. Shocked by what the father said, Shantanu returned to the palace. He had already appointed his son Devavrata, who was mothered by goddess Ganga, as the crown prince. He already said, he knew that the Devavrata deserved to be the king. How can the fisherman's daughter insist, her father insists, that her children will be the king? So he said, forget it, I'm going back to the palace. Devavrata he noticed that his father's mood had changed. So he asked those who went with his father to the forest, what happened? Why has my father's mood changed? Why does he look a little bit sad? So Devavrata eventually learned about a promise asked by the fisherman chief from one of the ministers. So he found out. So when Devavrata heard about this, he said, let me serve my father. Let me go and see the fisherman's daughter and also her father and find out what happened. So immediately Devavrata rushed to the hut of the fisherman chief, and he begged for Satyavati's hand on his father's behalf. He was such an obedient son, okay, because of the blessing given by Vashishtha. The fisherman repeated his condition. Devavrata took the oath. He said, I will renounce the claim to the throne. I'm telling you now, I'm making my promise, I will not be the king. Satyavati's son, your grandchild, will be the king. But the fisherman contended that Devavrata's children might dispute this. So now it was getting complicated. So then Devavrata, after giving the first promise to say, I will not be the king, Satyavati's son will be the king, he then had to take a second promise, the oath of celibacy, and it was called the terrible vow. So the fisherman, after Devavrata, made the second promise that I will not have any children. So there's no such thing as my children fighting with Satyavati's children for the kingdom, because I won't have any children. After he made the second vow, the fisherman immediately gave Satyavati to Devavrata. Yes, the marriage can proceed. So after that, Devavrata was called Bhishma. And what is the meaning of Bhishma? The one whose vows are terrible. So Bhishma presented Satyavati to Shantanu, who was overjoyed, and he married her. Satyavati bore two sons. After Shantanu passed away, Bhishma crowned the eldest son. The eldest son's name was Chitraganda. Okay? Chitragada as the king under Satyavati's command. But Chitrangada was later killed in battle. But she had another son. The younger brother, Vichitravirya, was then crowned the king. And Vichitravirya had two wives, Ambika and Ambalika. But he too passed away from illness before having any children. So you see, Satyavati's karma comes full circle. What she wanted, her father wanted, was not in accordance to Dharma. And if you don't practice Dharma, karma is going to come back and bite you. Okay? So now there is no heir to the throne, because Ambika and Ambalika are childless. Vichitra, Virya, and the elder brother have passed away. So having no heir to the throne, Satyavati asked Bhishma to take the throne and get married. Can you imagine? After getting Bhishma to make the promise not to become the king, she actually had to ask him to please become the king and get married. But Bhishma refused to break his vow, because he said, once I make a vow, I will never break it. And why did he make the vow? Because of Satyavati. So Satyavati well knew that it was now time to call her first son, Vyasa, to aid her. So Satyavati had a meeting with Vyasa to provide her grandsons through Ambika and Ambalika by blessing them to preserve the dynasty, because now there are no children. Bhishma says he's not going to get married. He's not going to have children. Ambika and Ambalika are childless. So what's going to happen to the kingdom? So during the fertile period of Ambika and Ambalika, Satyavati asked Ambika to present herself to Vyasa. And remember, Vyasa is the son of a fisherman's daughter who originally had a terrible smell. Okay? So now, can you imagine? He's also quite aged. So Ambika noticed his elderly appearance, and Vyasadev had terrible smell. So she closed the eyes. So Vyasa then declared to Satyavati that although I have blessed Ambika with her son, that son will be blind, but he will be strong. but he will be blind because she closed the eyes when she looked at me. And she will have 100 sons, okay, known as the Kauvaras, or descendants of Kuru. So now, Satyavati considered the blind child to be unworthy of a king. How can a blind king head the kingdom? So she asked Vyasa to bless her other daughter, Ambalika. So now Ambalika had to present herself to Vyasa Dev. And she heard the story from her sister. She now cannot close her eyes, but she was shivering. She felt pale due to Vyasa's grim appearance because he was quite badly dressed. He was a sage, okay? He wasn't dressed very modern in a very stylish manner. He was basically very shabbily dressed. So she felt pale. So Vyasa told the mother, as the result of Ambalika's feeling pale, the child would also be pale, which means he wouldn't be strong. He'll be quite a weak person, physically weak. So Satyavati then begged Vyasa for another child from Ambika after her first delivery. Ambika, now because Ambika first closed the eyes and she gave birth to Dhritarashtra, who was blind. So she didn't want to present herself again to Vyasadev. So what did she do? She dressed her maid in her clothes and got the maid to present herself to Vyasadev. So the maid was very happy. She said, wow, I'm wearing the princess's clothes and feel so happy. So she happily appeared to Vyasadev, and Vyasadev blessed her with an intelligent child, and a normal child was born. Okay, so they had 3 children. So there was the blind Dhritarashtra, the pale Pandu, who were born to Ambika and Ambalika. The maid gave birth to the famous Vidur. Okay, that's why Vidur was always the wise one in the palace. So due to Dhritarashtra's blindness and Vidur's birth from a maid, Pandu was eventually crowned the king of Hastinapur. So question 5 here. Why did Devavrata take the terrible vow of celibacy? Was it to ensure Satyavati's future sons would inherit the throne? Was it to prove his devotion to goddess Ganga? Was it to gain divine powers from Lord Brahma, or to become an ascetic and renounce the world? Anyone want to put up the hand?
It is A, Guruji.
Very good, Prabhuji. To ensure that Satyavati's future sons would inherit the throne. Well done. Okay, answer is A. Final question. How did Satyavati's karma come full circle? Because she denied Bhishma the right to the throne so that her own sons would come to rule, but after their death, she had to ask Bhishma to take the throne. Or because she was forced to leave the palace after King Shantanu's death, or because she was cursed to remain childless despite her efforts to secure the throne, or she was betrayed by Bhishma, who refused to support her sons as rulers.
It is A, Guruji.
Very good, Prabhuji. Answer is A again. So remember, if you don't practice Dharma, karma will come back and bite you. It is a perfect system. That is why always remember Purushartha. Dharma, Artha, Kam, finally we can get moksha. But if there's no Dharma, we can forget about it. We will take births again and again. And if we are lucky, we will get a human birth. If our karma is so negative, we won't even get a human birth. Okay? So answer here is A. So this properly reflects karmic reaction. Initially, Satyavati ensured that Bhishma would never be king. But after that, she begged him, can you please become king? And she refused. He refused. He said, I've already taken the vow, and I am the son of goddess Ganga. I will never break my word. So that's what happened. Okay. We have completed the lesson plan. Any questions from you, dear devotees? Any questions? Okay, I see that no questions. Let's do the Guru Vandana. So this story will be continued. Okay, what happens to Pandu? What happens to Dhritarashtra? How come Pandu, after being appointed as king, had to renounce the kingdom? And what happened when Dhritarashtra became king? So we will continue that in our next lesson. Let's do the Guru Vandana. Om Gum Guru Bhyo Namaha.
Om Gam Gurubhyo Namaha.
Om Namo Bhagavate Brahmanandaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Brahmanandaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shivanandaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate Shiva.
Shivanandaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Dear Prabhujis, thank you so much for joining today's class. Jai Shri
Tha-
Krishna. Om Namah Shivaya.
Thank you, Guruji. Jai Sri Krishna. Om Namah Shivaya.